Hello peeps, Dee here, back again. Welcome to my studio and to today's tutorial. Well, this is more acrylic paint, specifically gold paint on rainbow. Yeah. So the instructions for the rainbow are in the class, of course. Now, all of this has a decidedly Elise Winters look, doesn't it? And that's because her work was so strongly identified with this heavy gold paint and beautiful metallic Skinner blends and stuff. I don't have any metallics under here. It's just all flat color. So to the best of my knowledge, she didn't do anything that looked exactly like this. I don't know. Anyway, she is not with us anymore, unfortunately. So if this reminds you of Elise, well, you know what? I'll take that as a compliment because I really loved her work. So this class, yeah, it started out as just a very simple class on making earrings. Okay, now I started the class and I was having so much trouble making matching earrings that I ended up making a lot of separate pieces like this because they didn't quite match up. So I did figure out what I think are some very good strategies for making mirror image matching earrings using this technique. Now, along the way, I figured out another way of doing this. Here are two examples, and that is Silkscreen. Yeah. Okay, so if you happen to be someone who's manufacturing a lot and you have to produce the same thing or pretty close to the same thing over and over and over again, then I think Silkscreen is probably a better option for you than what I do here. Okay. Now, the problem with Silkscreen, of course, is that you have to have the Silkscreen that you want. I didn't have the Silkscreen that I wanted, therefore, I had to use what I had. Okay. Now, my personal preference is for more gold than color underneath. You can see that the gold paint is rather wide, and the color underneath is not as wide. Anyway, that's just me. So, Silkscreen starts us off. Then we move into earrings. And then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about why the same technique may yield pieces that are as different as these. Okay, and once you understand why these are different and how they're made different, then I think you'll be able to control the way your pieces look better, okay? Or you will better be able to control that because, you know, I was just making them, so I wasn't paying a lot of attention to making them the same. They just turned out the way they did. Then I had to backtrack and figure out exactly why so I could tell you. I don't know why these are in there. This is a controlled crackle on the same rainbow, but great, very big. This is not in class because honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Did make a ring though. That is not in the class. Okay, so I think that's it. This is like the 5th time I'm doing the introduction. I don't think I have to tell you anything else. So let's start class. Well, they are rainbows. Rainbows. And turquoise, you can see. There you go until you end up with magenta in the middle on this one. Now, let me find one that ends in this one. Okay, so I want you to look at the center here. You notice that it is not magenta. Maybe it's more clear here. It is not magenta in there. It's actually red. Okay, so in my rainbow, and I've got my 2 canes here, and I did explain this in another class. You can skip over it if you do not need the explanation. All right, so when you're constructing a rainbow like this, where there is no violet, then there is no necessity to absolutely use magenta. All right, you can use red. Now, you guys know if you're Skinner blending, let's say magenta and blue, you're going to get a violet in the middle. And if you Skinner blend a red to a blue, you're not going to get that nice clear violet. Okay? So for this construction where the order of go is red, yellow, blue, I don't really need to use magenta. I can use what I want. You guys know me, I'm more a red person than a magenta person, so this makes me happier, all right? If you're a violet person, then your colors will be like magenta, blue to yellow, okay? So you would have the violet and you would have green. In that case, you must use magenta. Okay, so there's that explanation. I'm going to include the steps for that, but you can zoom past if you already know how to make this cane, which is the Skinner Blend Striped Swirl Pendant. All right, I am going to include it so you don't have to search it out if you're not familiar with how this cane is made. Having said that, I think it's time to start. Our rainbow cane, rainbow striped cane, is going to start with turquoise, yellow, and magenta. Now, I could have chosen ultra blue, but I like this warmer blue better, so that's why I'm using the turquoise. I could have chosen red, but I decided, we'll do magenta instead. But I could have done that. And it would have been fine because I'm going to make a Skinner blend out of this. So these two will blend to green. These two will blend to orange. Now, if I were doing this, I would have these two colors blending to violet, these two blending to orange. So you see, you can move this around quite a bit. Let's put this one in the middle and this one here. These two would blend to green, these two would blend to violet, okay? So I am choosing to do it this way. I'll have magenta, orange, yellow, green, and turquoise. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Okay, the first thing I've got to do is take this yellow. Oops, I have a little bit of schmutz on my yellow. So I cut because I thought Vernon was coming down the stairs. It was Dusty. Yeah, it was my cat. Okay, so here's the yellow with a bit of schmutz. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to corner to corner, just like as if I were making a regular Skinner blend, which I am not. Now these two on the end are going to go like this. I fold them in half, like so. You see, not corner to corner, but folding in half. Now let's cut the end pieces. Da, 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 like so. And then like so. Okay. So in this particular arrangement, you can see that I need twice the volume of yellow that I do with these two colors on the ends. Now, let's just arrange this like so. I'm gonna leave a little space of yellow in the middle there, if I can. If I can, like that. Now I'm just gonna take my blade and cut along. Like so. Lift, remove the yellow, press the magenta in, lift, remove the yellow underneath, and press the turquoise up against the yellow. Now I have my setup for my rainbow cane. Okay, I'm going to take my acrylic rod, flatten it, just to join the pieces together. Might they separate? Yeah, you know what, they might. All right, so let's make our Skinner blend. I'm not making a huge cane here. Now, the first time through the rollers, 2 colors have to touch the rollers. If one color, like this blue, or one color, like this magenta, is touching the rollers only, then it's the wrong side. So, 2 colors touching the rollers. Ta-ta! Now, line it up again, same color edge on same color edge, like so. Fold on the rollers, roll through. Now, I do try to match it up like that. See, this side, the leading edge is the thinnest when I roll it through. In other words, where I'm placing the fold will be the thinnest. And as it rolls through, this gets wider. All right. Yeah, I'll show you. It's actually slightly wider there than it is here. Now, let's put it together again. And I can tell, because see, if I just like that, then that blue is hanging out past the blue in front. Okay. So let me continue folding and rolling, placing the fold on the rollers until I've made my rainbow. Now, I did not make a huge cane, obviously. So if it starts getting difficult to fold, then just reset your machine to a thinner setting, like I've just gone from 0 to 2. I'm going to place this edge on the rollers, roll through, and I have more clay to fold. Okay. So let me continue. I'm going to do a few more folds. Then I'll be back. Okay, guys, so here is my Skinner blend. Now, what do we know just by looking at this? You know what we know? We know yellow is a wimp. Yellow is a wimp. The blue, that green just rolled right over the yellow. And the same thing happened on this side, right? Yeah, we do know that. So I'm going to add more yellow, because my old yellow really disappointed me. So I've rolled this through setting number 2. And let's just add some. I would like to have a blend that's sort of more gradual to yellow than this. This is like magenta, orange, yellow, green, and turquoise. Yeah. All right. So let me work this in. Placing the fold on the rollers, I've rolled through. I made a bowl. I made a bowl. It happens. Okay. So you'll see what this looks like when I work it in. So this is what it looks like now, and you can see that the addition of that yellow really did make this gradation from this color to yellow, from turquoise to yellow, much more gradual. Now, if you feel you need more, just repeat, do the same thing. But for me, I think this is just fine. I like having a little more in here. The transition is just a little more gradual than it was before. So now we're going to turn this into a plug. Resetting my machine, setting number 3, placing a blended edge on the rollers, and I am going to roll through. Yes, here we are. Very nice. Very nice. Now, let's roll up the blended edge. Okay, this is pretty. Pretty, pretty, pretty. Now, reverse reduce, like so. Okay. Okay. There we go. We're getting there. I think I'm going to make this pretty short. Yeah, like so. Okay. Bit shorter. Shorter, shorter, shorter. You can always make it taller. All right. You know, the plug form is also a really great shape to store your Skinner blends. Okay. All right, so that's looking really good to me. There's our little rainbow guy. All right, now I'm going to cut, not exactly half, a little less than half. Let's say that's the half mark. And I'm gonna go down about, maybe about to here. And cut like so. Whole. All right, now I'm gonna flatten this out, and I am gonna add white to this. I'm gonna reblend. I'm gonna add white to my blend. Yep, I am. I am. Flatten. And let me take my white. Here's some white. You don't need a lot of it. Maybe a little more than that. Maybe just a bit more than that. Oops. Whoopsie. Okay, so let's see how this goes. This is setting number 5. I think I'm going to back this down to 4. Okay. Now I'm going to continue blending. So this edge on the rollers, roll through, fold and roll, fold and roll. So I'll do the first couple passes to show you. Back to setting 0. Should look like that. Now let's fold it. Just like your normal Skinner blend, same color edge on same color edge, fold on the rollers, roll through. Okay. So when I've blended all that white in, I will be back. So here is the sheet with the white, and here is the original. You can see the difference between them. I'm not going to add more white. I'm just fine with this. But what I am going to do is I'm going to turn this into a plug the same height as this one. Come on, come on. I have made many plugs. I've made many plugs in my life. Yeah, I have. I like them. I like them, I like them, I like them. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten both of these and roll them through the thickest setting of my pasta machine. Okay, let's flatten this one. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. See? About the same. Now I'm going to roll each of these through the thickest setting of my pasta machine. That guy. This guy. This guy. Okay, are they the same? Yeah, they're very close to the same width. Okay. I think I'm going to fold this through a coat. See how they're a little, it's not exactly a perfect blend. Didn't really have to be, I guess. Because making a cane, we're going to see this end. But another turn or two. Is it going to hurt it? Is it going to hurt it? Okay, I'll stop. I will stop now. All right, now it's time to stack it. Oh, I'm gonna fold and roll this one again too. There are little bits of clay all over everything. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now when I put these together, I am really I'm gonna make an effort to align them. So see how the yellow is on the yellow. I could just let it go where it's going to go. I mean, that's kind of interesting too, this up and down thing that's happening, right? So you can see it's going to go like that. We'll just leave it like that. Okay, ruler. Let's cut this puppy in half. 5 inches, 2.5. Stack one on top of the other. Maybe we'll make a deal. Maybe together we get some. Okay, so there we have 2 inch, 1 inch. Stack them up. Check both sides. I like this cane. All right, let me take a clean cut. Let's take a look. Oh, I like this little cane. I like it a lot. All right, so let me prepare the core. I'm just going to take some scrap clay. Scrap clay. You know, I don't know. Should I make that scrap? I don't know. It's too pretty to make scrap. So I'm just going to take this scrap and just mix it all up, make a cylinder, and I will be back. Okay, peeps. So the first thing we're going to do is silkscreen. All right. Now, all of the pieces you see before you were not made with silkscreen. These were made using the method that is to come. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what? I got to do silkscreen too. All right. Advantages of silkscreen for me are, number one, you get maximum coverage of the paint. And you won't be stretching this out because the spaces in between the paint are already built in. You see, when you do this method, we're cutting, we're stretching, and the stretching action is what creates the spaces between the paint. All right? So if you want maximum coverage, you're going to use a silkscreen. Silkscreens, okay, I'll tell you what I don't like about silkscreen. I don't like the fact that you have to clean the screens. Yeah, I'm a lazy butt. That's really the only thing I don't like about silkscreen. So anyway, but you can see the spaces are already built in. We're just going to lay paint down in the light areas. All right. Now, because we're not going to be stretching it out, you have to first make your underlying form so you know how much you need. Correctamundo? All right. So let's make the underlying form first. Now, because of the way I work, most of the time I make the underlying form last. Or if I have an underlying form, I will manipulate the laminate to make it fit the form, right? And that's why when you look at these, you can see that there's a lot of inconsistency in the coverage. This as opposed to this. One is much denser, this, okay? And that happened when I was covering because obviously I did not have enough laminate here, so it got stretched out more. I had closer to the amount of laminate I needed for the underlying form here. It got stretched out less. Yeah, it did. I think that makes sense, right? A lot of what I show you is, well, it includes this characteristic about me and the way I work. But that's why I'm doing this class the way I'm doing it, because as a teacher, I think it's really important that you're able to do what I show you on a consistent basis and not subject to, well, if this is too small, stretch this out, you know? It's like, I think we need to have, I think I need to make sure that you, as my students, don't find yourself with something that looks nothing like what I told you I was teaching. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's make the paint. Paint. Yeah, paint. All right, and this is the way all the underlying forms are made. Start with a cylinder, close the ends, do the taper, blah, la-di-da. Ta-ta! Okay, too big? Lop this off, taper, and continue. I'm not going to lop it off. What I am going to do is cut it in half, which means I'm going to straighten it that way. I'm going to take a stiff blade, not a thin noodly blade. I'm going to locate the center, like so. Then I'm going to cut to one point, and now I'm just going to carefully guide the blade to the other point. No, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's, you know, not bad. They're fairly close. But in order to make it more perfect, I probably should have been, where's the camera? Where the camera is. But the camera and my head can't be in the same place at the same time. So let us just select one. All right, there we go. Nice. Now I'm going to take one of these. This is all I have. See, I made all of that. I'm going to have to make another one of these canes. Okay, so let us create a sheet from here, one of these that is big enough to cover this form. Doesn't have to be thick. Hopefully that is fine. Now I'm going to take some scrap clay. I'm going to turn this into scrap clay. I should probably have sheets of scrap clay next to me. Don't you think? Yeah, I should. First, actually, I'm going to thin this out. I'm just going to thin it out to 3. Okay. That's pretty good. And this I have also rolled through 3. I'm going to put them together like so. Trim the sides. And now let us use the pasta machine to make this sheet big enough to cover this. All right, I'm going back to setting 0, which is the thickest on my pasta machine. So let's work on the length first. I'm going to put this edge through and roll. Not quite long enough. Let's go to setting number 1. Roll it through. Doesn't hurt you to work slowly here. Let's go to setting 2. Roll it through. We're getting there. Setting 3, once again, roll it through. There. Now it is long enough. As a matter of fact, it's a little too long. Now let's work on the width. It is perfect at this setting. It's perfect. It covers from one side to the other with just, see, almost perfectly. I've got a little bit of a trim to do there, but that's fine. All right, so I now know that this piece will cover this form. Now let's select our screen. Yes, and for this I'm going to use cheap paint. Okay, let's use the cheap paint. I'm sorry, I don't have stripes. All I have are these that are sort of an approximation of sort of maybe. We can make wood pattern, but let's just use this squiggle. Now, I have to be honest with you. I never know what side to use. Yeah, that's me. So I'm going to assume I'm going to use the side that this is not textured. It is the smooth side. This one, if you run your fingers, it goes like that. Okay, so let's place the smooth side. And do I want paint on the work surface? I do not. I'll scrape it off this tile like this. Now, if this were straight, this would probably make more sense to you. But as it is swirly lines, you're going to have to imagine these are straight. I'm not going to place it this way. I'm going to angle it like so. All right, so there's my angle. It's angling up. Let's make it a little more severe. Like so. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Since I don't do this all the time, let me fish out one of these. Oh, this is from Moiko. Moiko makes wonderful screens. To be honest, I don't think this is a Moiko screen. Her screens will have her name on them, and they're quite wonderful. Her patterns are beautiful. I have others, but I don't have anything that sort of approximates a stripe. Okay, now before I put the paint on, I want to prepare to clean it up. This is the problem. You got to clean it up. Where are my cleaning? I need a moment. Okay. So these are two ratty plastic trays that probably came on some kind of food. And this is the wash and this is the rinse. And I just made the treacherous 10-foot journey with these filled with water because I don't have a water bottle conveniently handy next to me. So let's push those aside. Yeah. Believe me, 10 feet treacherous carrying these two things. Yeah. All right. I have to move them over a bit more and hope that they don't spill. Hope they don't knock them. Let me just move my camera this way. All right, shake the paint, shake the paint. Now, of course, you can use the expensive paint if you want. You can, absolutely. Should I use this one or should I use that one? I believe this one's more opaque, so let's use this one. Because there again, there's another variable. What paint are you going to use? So that you'll just have to experiment and see what you like. Okay, so let's just take this and just screen it down. It's very watery. Very watery. Unlike that good old Liquitex paint, which is not terribly watery. Okay, so let's carefully lift it up. It's actually pretty thin looking to me, so I think that were I to do this again, if I wanted heavier coverage, yeah, I'd use the other paint. Okay, so now here's where your tray comes in. Don't wait. Okay, take it from me. You don't want to wait. You want to do this immediately. This has to dry anyway, so what's the diff, right? You can sit and twiddle your fingers, or you can clean your screen. My recommendation, clean your screen. Now I'm popping it over to the rinse cycle. I highly recommend a rinse cycle. And now my screen is clean, and I will lay it flat on this towel that I have next to me and let it dry. I wonder if I used the right side. Okay, now I have to begin the treacherous journey back to the sink. I'll be back. Okay, so I decided to try to check on which side. I think I did it backwards. So I took a Moiko screen. I think you're supposed to put the side with the more texture, face down. I did it backwards. I did it the other way. And you know what? That makes sense, doesn't it? Because you're laying down more paint if you do it the other way. Well, we're going to continue. We are going to continue. Now, it takes a while for this to dry. So what I'm going to do is make another sheet and do it the right way. All right? Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so we're ready. Now, this is actually thinner than the other one because, and it's a different cane, because I started out with a thinner slice, so I had to thin it out further to make it long enough. Now, I had to wait until this dried. You cannot use a wet screen. Okay, so I waited until this dried. Now, last time I put the flat side on, this time I'm going to do the textured side. You can see how it's raised, actually. And this time I'm going to angle it in the other direction. Okay, so let's angle it up this way. I'm just going to make it fit, like so. Now I have to go get my water again. Sorry. I'll be back. Okie dokie. We're going to use this again. Let me see. Yeah, I do have. Doesn't take much paint, does it? No, it doesn't. I want to get all the way. I know. I think I need to practice. Oh. All right. Here we go. Let's lift Nautilus. This guy goes into the water. The rinse, the wash cycle. Let me say, it seems to be easier to clean the screen when you push it through the smooth side. Makes sense, I guess. Getting all this paint into this sort of slightly textured surface. Okay, now into the rinse cycle. It's not that much harder. When I first started, when I did Silkscreen, I obviously haven't done it a lot, but you know, I thought, oh, if I just put it in the water, it'll be okay. No, that didn't work out so well. Okay, let me dump the water so it doesn't end up all over, and I'll be back. All right, so I waited for the paints to dry. It's not fair to compare wet to dry. They both have to be dry. Okay, so as I'm looking at it, there is definitely more paint laid down when you put the flat side up than the flat side down. I think the pattern might, I'm not sure it's cleaner or not. I don't know. The difference is not like night and day. It's like the difference between, oh, how can I say? Just trust me. It's not a humongous difference between them. There's just more paint on this side. All right, so I rolled new forms. So let's cover them up. Let me zoom out again. That will help. And we'll start with this guy. Now, these two are different. This is thinner. This is thicker. So chances are when I take this and I put it on this form, there may be a little more surface paint cracking, okay, because it's thicker. So this is not what you would call a perfect comparison. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I'm just going to position it like so on the back. Okay. Maybe I can move it just a tad toward this tip. Lift and center it all the way to the other. Okay. Ease it over like so. Yeah, so this is definitely less messy in the actual application of the paint, and cleaning the screens is not a big deal. It is not. It's just that sometimes there's this thing that happens with me, like, I don't really feel like cleaning a screen. Do I really want to do that? You know, you make a bigger deal of something than it really is. Okay, I don't know if you guys do that. I do it. Okay, so let us trim the back. Now, because this is thicker, it's also, of course, going to be a bigger piece. That makes sense, right? Just, I mean, the volume. There's just more clay here. Coochie, 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 coo. Okay, let's finish trimming. I want this back to be nice and flat. Flat ski. Okay, there we go. Okie dokie. Now, let me do the other one, and then we will coil them. Actually, I'm going to coil now. I don't really want this to wait too much longer. The longer it waits, the more likely it is that this mass of clay may crack, like in through here. So which way do you roll? Okay, so I'm going to say, see how it's, the stripes are going off this in this direction? That means I will curl this way. At one time I thought it didn't matter. Well, you know what? Maybe ultimately, maybe it doesn't matter so much, but I think it does. Maybe the other one I'll coil in the other direction just to show you what the difference is. Now, you'll notice I am working against my work surface. And I'm not really pushing this, I'm just sort of holding it in position, because we've talked about the memory that clay develops. This was straight. It wanted to stay straight. And I'm saying, oh, no, 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 no. No, 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 you're gonna curve. And it's resisting, because it has its memory of what it was and the way I formed it. So it's resistant, but it's not impossibly resistant, is it? It will definitely do what you want it to do. Okay, and try to make sure the center is flat. It remains flat. Sometimes that's not the easiest thing to do, because the act of curling that much clay sort of pushes the clay up. All right, so there is this guy. Now, you can imagine if these lines were straight, there's quite a bit more space in between the stripes. Now, that's where the specific pattern you select is, because I'm sure there are screens that might have less space between, or more space between these lines, because of course the translucent part where you see the screen, that's where the paint is laid down. Okay, so you are probably, it just depends on the screen you have and you use as to how much of the background will actually show. Okay, so let's set that aside. Let's do this guy. And then we'll compare the density of the paint at that point. I expect this paint to be more dense, not only because I actually laid down more paint, but also because the sheet is so thin, right? Because the sheet is thin, it stretches less as it's going around. The more stretch you have, the more the paint gets stretched out. And when the paint gets stretched out, you're going to end up with cracks. And, you know, it's actually thinner. Okay, if that makes any sense. Yeah, this class was going to be much shorter and much simpler until I thought, wait, just a minute. There's another way. But I was on a certain track, and that was the track I was following. And I had to make all of those over there before it occurred to me that there is another track. Yuppers. Okay, so this time, okay, and I will roll from this side again. Now, the last time I rolled in this direction. Well, wait a minute. No, the last time I rolled in this direction. No, like that. It's angled out this way. I'm rolling toward this side. Let's do it the other way and see what happens. See if it makes any difference in the pattern. Might as well. We might learn something. It's all about learning something, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't wait. Had I waited, that might have cracked. Lint, my friend, lint. Okay. Now let's look at the two of them side by side. And there is a difference in the pattern. There is. This starts here, it ends up out here. This starts here and it ends up more toward this side. Or maybe, hum. No, I guess you can see it more clearly at the end. See how here it's pointing that direction, kind of pointing back. And here it sort of points forward. I'm not sure it makes any difference. I'm not sure anyone would ever notice that. Okay, so let me put this here. We will just examine them side by side. This is one of those classes where I'm learning with you. Okay. All right, so there's the Silkscreen. Now let's compare the Silkscreen to your average, whatever this is, golden Nautilus. Okay, so there's one. But you gotta remember, sometimes they look like this, sometimes they look like this. I would say if you wanted something that's more consistent, like consistently you get the same look, the Silkscreen is the way to go. Okay. All right, so these will go in the oven, and then we will go on to method 2, which is the way I started. Okay, before I begin, I just want to show you what I've got. Approximately half a bar of each of these colors. Maybe I need a bit more magenta. Actually, for this kind of blend, you need twice the volume on the ends. No, twice the volume in the middle that you will be using on the ends, okay? Now, as you can see, I'm going to add some white to this yellow. I want to boost it up so that this blue does not completely run over the yellow. This is a weak color. This is a strong color. The white will increase the strength of the yellow. So let's do it. I'm going to condition, I'm going to make my blend, and I'm going to make my cane. Now, the instructions for this cane appear in the class. If you already know how to do it, you can skip it. Yeah, seriously. Okay, let me get this done. Okay, so here's the blend. You can see, look at how much deeper and more intense the middle of this is going to be. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they look like when they're done. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, now I'm going to plug it and I'm going to continue and finish up the cane. Okay, so I added white to this, and this is what I got. You know, I look at this as I've sliced it open. It is just too dark for me. Yeah, it's too dark. It's like, how can I say this? Sometimes, you know, you'll get ink, right? And the color is so concentrated. And then you put a drop out, and you mix it with alcohol, and it thins it out. And that's when a better color emerges. This is too dark for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this out, and I am going to add some white to it. Not as much as I did here. This, no, I don't want to reproduce this with this. I just want to lighten this up and give these colors a little more life. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do because I can. So I don't know exactly how much I want to add. I know what I did here was, this is setting 1, thickest on my pasta machine. So to make this color out of this, I had double the white. So it's 1/3 this to 2/3 white. I don't want to do that. I already did it here. So I have rolled this through setting 5 of my pasta machine. And you know what? I'm just going to put that much in. As I said, I just want to lighten it up. I want to give it a little bit of life. I don't necessarily want to make it totally pastel. I just want to lighten it up. So now I'm going to blend this in by just continuing a Skinner blend. Roll it through, fold and roll, fold and roll. Okay, so here are my 2 colors. I like this much better. You see how the green is now, it was so dark, 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 dark. And now, by adding the white, more of the color has emerged. So, I'm going to roll these back into plugs, and I'm going to finish up the cane using these 2 colors. Yeah, like them. All right, peeps, here it is, and I think it's much improved with the addition of that white. Otherwise, this would have just looked like dark. Some unidentifiable darkness in here. IMO. All right, so now we are going to make the base of the Nautilus earrings. Now, in my experience, okay, see, so I made many pairs of earrings. I'm going to show you this guy, okay? Lovely. I love it. Let's weigh it, because it's heavy. I put them on, and it's like, oh, it's pulling on my ears. Like, not terrible, not like I'm hanging a nut or a bolt from my ears, but it's just a bit uncomfortable. It weighs 10 grams. 10 grams is like right at my level of tolerance. This means I do not want to make 2 earrings that are 10 grams each. Now, a little bit of this is sort of, I'm trying to balance a couple things. I can weigh the core out, right? I can take, let's say my ideal earring is 7 grams. Okay, let's just say that my ideal earring is 7. Well, if I measure out 14 and I cut it in half, I will have 7 grams each. However, that does not take into account I will be adding more clay to the surface. I'll be adding a little earring post. Okay, they don't weigh very much, but you know, there are things that are going to increase the weight. All right? So all of this is kind of approximate because I don't know exactly how much the laminate's going to weigh. That I don't know. So starting at 10, let's say the underlying form might be, underlying form might be 6 or 7. And then I add another 4 grams to the surface. Okay? I mean, I'm thinking that is a distinct possibility. So if my total at the end of the day that I am aiming for is 7, something definitely under 10, then let me try 10 grams in total. Okay? So I'm aiming for 10 grams in total. That is 9 grams. It'd be nice if I could just get it going here. That is 10 grams. Cut this in half. I've got 5 grams in the underlying base form. And then onto that, I can add my laminate, and hopefully it will be no more than 2 or 3 grams. Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm hoping. So what I'm going to try to do is make my laminate as thin as possible. Okay? All right, let me turn you off. Yeah. Okay. So let's form this guy first. And to make that Nautilus shape, what I need to do is I need to have a long tapering almond shape. Long tapering clay pod shape. Almonds are not generally that long, so. Okay, so let me try to give this a go. Let's do a quick twirly swirly thing. But first, I'm going to measure the length. I need to do a little test here. Okay, so let me measure the length. So we are at 4 inches. By 4 inches when I twirl and swirl. How much does this take me around? Earrings will be about that big. Okay, that's fine. That is fine. Okay, so let me untwirl it. So far, this is what we know. I have made Actually, I have to do this again. I apologize. I should have given you the original length. Would have helped, right? Would have helped. Let me think. Do I have to do that? If I give you the weight and I tell you to bring it out to 4 inches in this particular shape, I think we're okay. I think we're okay. I don't have to do this again. Okay. All right. There we go. Now, I'm going to cut this in half, but first I want to lay it out very straight. All right. Then I'm going to take this guy, which is one of my thick blades. And I'm going to move the camera because I have to get my head right over this. And so far, my camera's kind of right over it. All right, so excuse me for a moment. I'm going to move this back so I can get my head in. And what I do is I find the center right there. Didn't look like the center to you because of the camera angle, but as I'm looking straight over the top, I'm looking at my blade resting on the center line that would divide the 2 halves. All right, now I'm going to take my left hand and push the point of the blade down to the table, and now I will take my right and slowly feed the blade along the length, aiming at the tip. All right, so here we go. This is what I have, 1 and 2. Now one of them looks just a tad larger. I don't know that I've ever been able to make them exactly the same size, but it's close. It's close. All right, let me weigh the big one. Let me just weigh the big one. Big one weighs 5. Little one weighs 4, so I am off 1 whole gram. All right, so what I'm going to do next is even them up. Okay, now evening them up is a matter of adding more to the bottom of the small one. How much? Not much. I'm going to roll this through like setting 6. Okay, so it's pretty thin. Setting 6. But let me just place it on top and see if now they are approximately the same height. And still, this one appears to be a little bit lower. So I am going to try setting 5. Place it on the sheet. Take this, put it next to it. And yes, I'm much, much closer. I'm happier. What I will now do is trim around the outside of this form. Oops. Oopsie. Maybe I should have made the base sheet a different color. I'm cutting gray next to gray. And it's okay. I'm going to move my camera back though, because now I'm reaching across. I'm trying to be good and look at the camera every now and then, because you guys know. You guys know. You guys know. Sometimes I go flying off into the hinterlands and I forget what I'm doing. Ta-da. Let's double check. Let's do a weight check. 6. Now this one's 6 and this one's 5, but they are closer to the same size. Okay, let me see. I'm just going to have to live with that difference. As long as they don't look terribly different. And they, even though I've added 1 gram, they don't look as different as they did before. Let me just cut some of this away, like so. Flatten this out. Okay, so you're going to make, you know, small adjustments to the base form as I have, but you'll get there, okay? All right. Now, let's deal with this guy. Now, because I really don't wish to add a lot of weight, right? It's the weight thing. What I'm going to do is mark my marks it like the 3 millimeters across one surface, and I'm going to cut 2 slices. First one appears to be a little bit larger. Let me see if I can trim some of that away. I need 1 slice per earring. Yeah, I do. Okay, there we go. Now let us take our 2 slices and put them together mirror image style like that. Now I'm just going to see how even I have cut. So at the center, I can feel that the one on the right is just a tad higher than the one on the left. So I will take my blade. This is that really thin blue blade. And I'm just going to try to shave off, and literally, see what I'm doing? I'm just shaving like that. Shave that off. And the center still feels a little bit taller on this side. But not extremely so. All right, let's flip to the other side. Do the same thing. This one is a bit thicker. Let me shave some off. And when I'm shaving, I'm arcing the blade slightly and moving through at a slight angle as well. Now that's good. All right, so these 2 pieces are going to be rolled through the setting machine together. Yeah, together. We'll start at 0. Start at 0. And they're pretty even. Now, when you roll your clay through like slices that you've cut, if you notice that the piece is curving off into one direction or one side is a lot longer, well, you know what that means. It just means you had an uneven cut. Okay, let's roll through 2. Now, this is wide enough to go around, but it wouldn't hurt because each one of these, right, is going to be wrapped around here. So it's got to be wide enough to go from there all the way around to the other side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll this way, set this piece on the rollers and roll through. But I have to reset my machine to setting 3. So I'm making it just a tad wider, like so. So now I know for sure they're wide enough. They are not, however, long enough. So let's reset the machine. Roll through 4. Roll through 4. Okay. Now, clearly, these are not long enough to cover the whole thing. But I don't want them to be the same length because I'm going to put the paint on, I'm going to do my cutting, and then the only way you get the appearance of the rainbow cane underneath is by further thinning the sheet, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the only way. You have to thin the sheet. And every time you thin the sheet, you're making it bigger. So what I'm going to do is stop here. I'm going to take more scrap clay. I'm going to roll it very, very thin. very thin, and I'm going to back each of these pieces because they are by now quite thin. And were I to proceed with sheets this thin, would be terribly, terribly difficult. And, you know, that's unnecessary. Unnecessarily difficult. Yuppie, yuppie, yuppie. Okay, now here again is another one of those guesstimating things. I'm guesstimating. I need to make these thick enough for me to work with, but I don't want them so thick. Okay? So this I rolled through setting 5. Actually, let me roll through setting, well, let's see what setting 4 looks like. Here's 4. I think that will be okay. And it will make my life easier than setting 5, I believe. So let's put our slices on our scrap clay. Don't forget to mirror image. Don't flip one over. Make sure that you maintain that mirror imaging thing going on, right? There we go. Okay. Let me move this back to the center. All right, so now I'm going to take my paint. I'm going to do the dabby thing, right? And I'll probably do about 5 coats as I did in the, well, I'm going to do about 5 coats. Okay? Thin coat, let it dry. 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 I want maximum coverage. I don't want to see much of the rainbow underneath the paint. Now, this paint is sort of translucent or transparent. It's like flecks in something that's translucent because you don't get this tremendous coverage, right? You have to build up many layers. Looks opaque. Not quite, okay? So just build up your color. And some of you might want to use a brush. I'm just so used to using my fingers, and I'm probably freaking some people out. Sorry. Sorry. Lo-de-do. It's just what I do. And you know what? I'm old. I'm old. So, you know, kind of the older you get, the less you think about, well, you know, this could be harmful for my health. I am past the point where, I remember, what was it? My mother, something would stunt your growth. I remember her telling us that you don't want to drink this because it's going to stunt your growth. I didn't drink it. I'm still short. Oh, well. Okay, so you get to a certain age and you stop thinking about, well, this is really bad for you. Yeah, sorry. All right, so that is the first coat. I'm going to let it dry. It won't take long, probably a minute. And then I will do another coat. And then I will do another coat. And I will shoot. Okay, so here. This is coat number 1. And I will number them, okay? I won't make you watch me, but I'll number them. All right, my peeps. Listen, if this looks a little bit different to you, like something looks different about what you're looking at. It's because it is. I had to do this over. I had to do it over because my original solution, what I thought in quotes was a solution, turned out not to be a solution. Works in only one instance, really, and that is when you're cutting a 45-degree angle. That's not good. That's not good, because you might not want to cut a 45-degree angle. So, yeah, I was asleep, and I woke up, and I realized my mistake. Yeah, the middle of the night. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to cut these two strips, and the way they're arranged is like that, so they're mirror image, like this. So first, we're going to align them up. Anyway, the goal is to cut them so that they are mirror imaged, and they are the same, right? Because you can cut the correct angles like this, and as you're cutting, you can alter the distance between them so that it would be possible for all the cuts here to be very close together and the cuts here to be far apart. Yeah, that's hardly a match, I would say. Okay, so first I'm going to cut the bottom off. Yeah, I am cutting the bottom off as close to perpendicular to the sides as I can. Now, I'm going to guesstimate the angle on one. See, I think 45 degrees is just too steep for me. So I'm going to cut, let's say, everything will be cut at that angle. So let me replicate that angle in the other piece by taking and positioning this right there, and going to the corner and cutting like that. Okay, so I think that's nice and close. I do. Okay, now let's set those aside for a moment. I'm taking a piece of tape. Just regular old Scotch tape. I'm going to put it on my work surface, like so. Let me make my life a little easier. I'll do that. And now I'm going to draw a line on the tape using my ruler. Yeah, my dusty ruler. It's true. Oh, I could use, well, this is fine. Okay, here we go. Say something like that, and that there. Like so. Okay. Yeah, it woke me up. I'm like, what am I doing? That doesn't work. In my mind, it worked. But thank heaven for, insomnia. So can you see what I'm doing? I'm just positioning that cut line right on the line that I drew on my tape. Yeah. Let's move that down just a touch. Okay. Now I'm going to take my little blue blade, this guy, and I am going to cut across both of them like that. Just like that. Cutting both at the same time. And because I'm not a machine, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be more perfect than if I had cut them separately. That I can guarantee. That I can guarantee. okay? And now I will continue going this way, and then I will do these and I'll be done. So I'll continue and I'll be back when I've finished. Okay, I'm back. All right, so let's just lift them up off the tape. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Lift the tape up. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to put them together like this. You see? And they will be rolled through the pasta machine together. All right, good deal. They kind of came apart. It's not critical that they stay together, but let's do at least the first time. I would like them together. Now I'm going to put this edge on the rollers. And these sheets were rolled through 3, so I'm going to roll them together through setting 4. Okay, so there we go. And they're great because they are really mirror image. Now, if you want to spread them out further, just reset the machine, roll through a thinner setting. Now, they're a little bit thin right now, so what I might do if I wanted to spread them out, significantly spread them out, then what I would do is back this sheet with a thin sheet of another, you know, scrap clay, maybe rolled through 6 or 7. Now, I mean thin, and then roll that together through a thinner setting, or even start with the same setting and then continue to go down. Anyway, so that's the scoop. That's the way you get a matching pattern. Mirror imaged, same scale for earrings. Okay, let's move on. So let's weigh this, figure out how much I'm going to be adding to my base. I'll be adding probably half of that. That's 8, so it's going to be approximately 4 grams that I'm adding to 6. So now I'm back to 10. How the heck? Okay, so let's say that I'm really, really not wanting to add more weight. I don't want more weight. So I'm going to take each of these, place this edge on the rollers, roll through a thinner setting, make the whole thing thinner. Now what this also tells me is originally, remember when I said 5 or 4, I should have gone with 5. Yeah. I kind of wish I had gone with 5, although that looks good. That looks good. So same thing here. All right. So now I will have lightened it up. Lightened it up a bit. Okay, so all this rolling has not significantly made the gold crackle too much. It's still pretty dense on the sheet. The thinner I make this, of course, the more the gold gets spread out, the thinner it becomes. I don't necessarily want that. Okay, so do I want the violet in at the beginning of the coil, or do I want the violet out at the end of the coil? In or out? I guess I'll go in. I'll go in. Now, how much of this do I have? Do I have enough to make 2 pairs of earrings? I do. Look at that. I can make 2 pairs of earrings. So I can cut this in half. Actually, Actually, I think you could get in trouble doing that, you know. You can. Let's just start here. See, I've centered the sheet. Let me go all the way around to the other side. And this is when I will cut. Okay. Oops. All right. And you just want to work that clay around your base form like this. Might help to turn it over. Make sure that this guy is running pretty straight up that sheet like so, and then then you can turn it over and just press the sheet to the core. You want to try not to get any air pockets in there, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens, yeah. Sometimes you have to pierce with a needle or something to get rid of them. Okay, now I'm going to trim the excess away with my blade, like so. If you don't want to cut that way, of course, you can just stand it up on its side and then cut like this. Let me just trim this one little part here. Just taking the blade and chopping like this if you don't want to cut as I do. Now the tips, the end should probably be pushed to the back like that. Then you can take your blade and just slowly cut. There. All right, let's repeat on the other side. Take the blade. I'm trying to run it across the bottom, like so. I ended up with a great big old noodly piece at the end. That's okay. Noodly piece just gets trimmed away, like so. And as long as you don't move really fast or you don't cut really hard, like you don't use a lot of force, you're going to be fine. You won't cut yourself. I think I have told you before how the worst cut I ever got was with a single-edged razor blade. You know why? Because it was laying here and I started rolling. And it was a bad cut. I don't have any single-edged razor blades in my studio anymore. No, but I have plenty of blades like this because I've never cut myself on those. All right, so the act of cutting sometimes cuts through the whole sheet. And of course, as you take something with a cut in it and you wrap it around some form, it may open up. I don't really mind that. As a matter of fact, some of the pieces, you can see the cuts. Sometimes that dark underneath is exposed. I don't mind it. I think it makes it look more interesting. Okay. Now that we're covered, I want to immediately start coiling. You're not going to make like 20 of these like this, set them aside, come back and coil them. That I would not recommend under any circumstances, because the longer this sits, the colder this clay gets, the more likely it is you're going to start getting cracking. Make sense? Yes, of course it makes sense. You guys know. Okay. Now, this is a little problematic. See how that raw clay is exposed? Let me just try to cut it away. I don't have any clay to stretch over to speak of, so I've got to eliminate it. And as I'm working, I'm going to keep pushing it flat. All right, so let's do it. Which direction to coil? Well, Okay, so we're angled out this way, like that. So I'm going to take the tip and I'm going to push it this way. The hardest thing is just getting it started. So take your time, pinch like this, use your finger, push it over just a bit. Okay. You want to try to keep this whole piece flat against your work surface. But in order to get it started, you may have to work in your fingers like so. Then drop it to your work surface and start pushing it around that central, that little spiral that you created in your fingers. Now we've talked about clay having a memory. You're going to work kind of slowly as you push it around the center. And as long as you give the clay time to catch up, you shouldn't have too much problem with cracking. Make your Nautiluses as soon as you can. Work slowly, let the clay catch up to you, and you shouldn't have much problem with cracking. The only cracking I ever got was a little bit of cracking. Let me see if I can find one, or if I covered them all up. But I have not had any problems with cracking to speak of. Oh, see right here. Right there, there's a tiny little crack. I'm going to cover it up. Nobody will ever see it. But nonetheless, that may happen to you. Okay. There's one. And that's a rather nice crackle. And I really like the way, I like the amount of space between the gold. All right, so let me make the other one. I will match it up and then I'll be back. All right, so I pressed them to this ceramic tile. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them like this for probably half an hour or so. I'd like them to sort of accept their new form, right? I just forced something straight into something coiled, and you know, it wasn't an easy transition for the clay. So let's give it a little bit of time just to relax and accept its new shape. Yeah, because I just have the feeling it's kind of like a spring uncoiled. If I lifted it up and I just left it, I think it would slowly open up again. So let's do that, and then I'll pop it in the oven. So these pieces are out of the oven, and I think they look good. They really look good. I made a second pair out of that scrap that I had. Now, the one thing about it is, you know, gold is a definite color. It is yellow. So if you're going to put yellow over violet, what do you suppose is going to happen? They're complementary colors, so if you were to mix the two together, you know, they kind of form mud. So I think that from a distance, it starts looking a little bit muddy in through the middle areas because of the way the gold is interacting with the violet. So if I do it again, and I'm going to do it again because I have a ton of cane, I think I'm going to do silver. We'll give silver a try on this. Now, I think the gold is very successful on these colors. Just look what happens here. When the yellow is over the magenta, you get kind of a warm, sort of orangey color, right? You hold it from a distance. They mix together nicely. The green mixes nicely with the gold, and so does the turquoise. Here, the gold is not mixing in the same fashion. Well, I'm not that fond of the way they mix together. So I think the next ones I'm going to make will be silver. Okay, just something to consider. So I have sanded the backs and I marked them with a pen where I'm going to put the post. But you see where this is like sunk in like that. Well, that's not good. That has to be filled in. And that's what happens when you're doing the coiling. Usually you will have a vacuum, some kind of space there. And when you do, you have to fill it in. So I've got softened scrap clay. I put a light coat of liquid clay there, and let's just push it in. So we don't have a space, we don't have a hole. Okay, just pull it over. I just don't want the backing clay to sink into it, so I have to fill it in. All right, so that's pretty good. Okay, the next thing I have to do is glue the pin backs on. I have my glue. Let's put a little bit there, a little bit there. Take the pin backs, put them over the mark and hold. I'm just pressing. Like so. Repeat on the other side. That's a lot of glue I got on there. Push it down. How are we looking? That looks good to me. Now I will let this wait. I'll let that dry. Now I'm going to back it with this coppery gold. This is sort of a mixture of gold and copper together. Normally I use black. You guys know that. I just automatically reach for the black clay. Well, this time, you know, I think that this is a better color. There's a better color on the backs of all of these pieces than black. So I'm going to make this as thin as I can. Let me roll this through setting 5, like so. And I'm going to roll it through again with my sponge to texture. And I'm resetting my machine. I backed it down to 4, so I'll roll this through on 4. Okay, here we go. And that's a nice texture on there. It's fine. Oh, I'm gonna grab a piece of deli paper to work on. Okay. Actually, I didn't need the deli paper. For a pendant, you would need the deli paper. You push it down and then you cut around. Okay, now I'm going to put a light coat of liquid clay on the back. I'm going to try to avoid the glue. I have ruined more brushes by getting the brush too close and just gathering up glue, and then I end up with, well, very, very stiff bristles. Okay. I've enjoyed doing this class, but I'll be glad when it's over because I've done it over so many times. Yeah, I have. It's definitely a doink. Okay, there we go. Take this and put it down over like so. Press, press, press. Just like that. I've got a little gap there. I don't like that one little bit. So let me see about closing that up. If I can't, I'm just going to pull it off and roll it again. As a matter of fact, I'm looking and the texture is so light. It's like uncharacteristically light. So I'm going to roll these through again. Again, I don't know why it didn't transfer very much. So I had reset the machine to 4. I'm going to go back up to 5. Roll it through. That's better. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why. All I know is it can be corrected, so I corrected it. This gets set someplace else. Let me just brush up just a bit more on. Yeah, better all around. Lint. Okay, just gonna cut the excess off. It just gets in my way. Gets in my way. Okay, now I'm gonna take my scalpel. Actually, it's not a scalpel, it's a craft knife. It's a Temu craft knife. I do have a real scalpel somewhere. I used to travel with my scalpel, and I flew to England once and they took all the blades, leaving me with a scalpel handle. I was like, why would you go to the trouble of doing that? I had a handle and no blades. It was very weird. Okay, you're going to inspect the edge, make sure you're happy. If you're not happy, then you have to correct it. Okay, just in case there are air pockets, I'm going to take this little needle and doink, 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 doink. Bunch of holes. Okay. My signature cane. Oh, you guys, my studio's such a mess. I better clean it tomorrow. Yeah. It's a mess. I clean it and almost immediately it looks just like this. Okay, so there we go. There's one. Now I will do the other, pop it in the oven, then I don't know if I feel like doing this pair today. Yeah, I might do it tomorrow. And then, you know what? I'll be back. So we did silver over the cool colors, the lavender and the turquoise and the magenta. And this is what we had. I then tried gold over one part and silver over the other. It's not very successful because the transition is really not very good. But then I thought, you know what, I'm going to thin it out just to show you guys that thinning it out just exposes more of the underlying color. Now, I did this on the warm color rainbow, but you can still see that thinning it out exposes more of the color underneath. And I think that that would make this more successful too, is actually thinning it out a little more. Yeah. All right. So here are the originals. Here are these guys. Now, one thing I want to say is, let's say you happen to be a violet person who loves gold. Yeah, they do exist. If you want more of the color exposed underneath, that is the violets and the lavenders exposed underneath, and you don't want to see as you don't want the gold to influence the color quite so much, you can do something like this, which is doing the snakeskin chop, you know, from one corner to another, then from the other corner, so that you're cutting these tiny squares, and treat it that way. And you can see that you see a lot more of the color underneath when you do that. And this paint is pretty dense, I would say. Yeah, so the paint wasn't even thinned out very much, and you see much more of the underlying color. Okay, so here's another thing. Not everybody wants, you know, high contrast. These I think are very pretty. It's just copper with gold. And I did the snakeskin cut on these, but I really like them. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so now let's talk about the variables. I've written this list so many times. I've done this like 4 or 5 times because it was still confusing. And if it's confusing to me as I'm presenting it to you, it's going to be confusing to you. You can trust me on that. So let's try again. Number 1, the paint. The paint. All paints are not the same transparency or opacity. My paint, this is what I use primarily, the Liquitex Iridescent Riche Gold. I love it. But, you know, it's not a particularly opaque paint, so it takes me 4 or 5 coats, light coats, to get the coverage and the density I want. Not all paints are like this. They're different. So this is going to depend on what you choose to use and what you have. Okay. The second thing is that will affect your pattern and the opacity of your applied paint is the relative size of the piece, in this case canes, that you're going to apply the paint to and cut and stretch out to your finished form. The greater the distance, the difference between these two, the thinner your paint will be, the wider your stripes will be, the more the underlying color will be exposed. That makes sense, right? Taking this little thing, spreading it out, you'll probably have to put some clay on the back of it, but it can be done. This little piece can cover this little piece, provided you put enough clay underneath as you go. Okay. Less so with this piece. It's closer in size to the finished form, isn't it? But in order to make this piece big enough to cover this piece, the gold will indeed thin out. Yes, it will. This piece is almost the same size as this piece. So if I take my gold paint, I put my 4 coats on, I do my chop, 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 I spread it out a little, because always you have to spread it out. You've got to thin this somehow. Otherwise, you just have a gold sheet of clay with cuts like that. And you would not expose the underlying cane or clay at all. So it always has to be thinned some. But in this case, it wouldn't have to be thinned very much. That means that the gold stripes would be maximum opacity, they would be thick, and the exposed clay underneath would not be very wide. Be strips, thinner strips. Thinner strips like, let's say like this. Maybe even like, okay, here's another example. See how thin the exposed rainbow underneath is? Yeah, it's a lot thinner. Well, that's what you're going to get the closer this is to this. Okay, so I hope that's clear. The more opaque you want the paint, the closer these two should be. Okay. Now, the last thing is the angle of cutting. And you know, I shot this already, so I'm going to insert it here. Let's just say that the angle that you cut will affect the thickness of the stripe in between the gold stripes. You got gold stripes, and then you have exposed cane or exposed clay underneath. The angle that you cut and the angle at which you roll through the pasta machine is either going to make that space larger or smaller. So that's what the following demo is. Okay? Now, in the class, I got very fussy. Remember when I cut the angle and then I cut like this and then I put, what I did was basically nothing. Nothing. Because I cut the angle like this, and I sent the clay through like this, right? Imagine these are the rollers, like this. I made absolutely no difference. There's no difference between sending this through and sending this through. It's the very same angle. If I had wanted to make any difference at all, when I cut like this, I would have sent the clay through at this angle. Not at this one, but at this one. And I didn't. I just sent it through like this, so I did absolutely nothing. All right? So there's another variable for you, is the angle at which you send the clay through after you have cut it. Okay. All right, moving on. Right, so there's one last thing that I'd like you to consider, and that is the relative size of the form you cover and the sheet that you are going to cut, to put the paint on and cut, and then stretch out. Okay? It's pretty big. If I take this and I put the paint on and I cut and I stretch it out, do you know how much I'm going to have to stretch it out to cover that? Yeah, a lot. That means that the paint will probably have more of this kind of look to it because you're going to thin it out. Maybe even more like this, right? So if you want something that's dense like this, then you're going to have to start out with a much larger sheet, like that. Now, you can either start with a larger cane, in other words, have made a larger cane, or spread this out before you put the paint on it. That would work just fine. Yes, the stripes will be bigger. Yes, they'll be longer. But that is not going to make that much difference, in my opinion, for something like what we're doing here. Okay? So let me just quickly do it. I'm just going to spread it out to what I think the size should be. Okay, first let me just roll it through to make it long. All right, so it's not exactly as long as the form. Now, let me roll it sideways to make sure that it's wide enough to cover. Yeah, I think that's okay. All right, now this is what I will put the paint on. It's a little bit thin, so I will take some scrap clay. Let me just grab some here. Some of my scrappage. Oh wait, I have all this paint scrappage. Look at that. Pretty, huh? But what am I going to do with it? So for purposes of this demonstration, let us just treat it like scrap clay. So I've rolled this through setting 8, but you know what? Just even that little bit is going to be fine. I suppose I could take the clean side. Oh, okay, so I don't have a clean side exactly. This is just a demo. Okay, like so. Okay, peeps. Now, I think that this would be a good size to cover this. Put the paint on, cut, put it in the pasta machine to spread it out a bit, to create the space between the gold, and then use that to cover. Now, I will do that. I won't force you to watch me, but you can see what the relative size of this sheet to the form is. Here is the thickness. It appears to be maybe a 3, setting 3 in total. So let me do that, and then I'll be back. All right, so here is the sheet that I cut. Here is the form I'm covering. Okay, now let's cover quickly, once again, the direction of rolling. If I place it here, they should spread out pretty nicely. There won't be a lot of space in between the gold. If the further I move this way, like if I roll this way, of course there's gonna be no space, right? Right? If I move this way, then we end up getting a lot of space between the gold lines. All right, so let me first establish how thick this is. I'm gonna roll this through setting 2, and I will put it right there. Okay, well that flattened it out nicely. Now moving to 3. There's 3. Now it's not quite long enough, but that's looking nice. Okay, let's do it again. Setting 4. There we go. So this is the kind of sheet that I like, where there's the, the gold is wider than the Skinner blend, than the rainbow blend underneath. So we're gonna stick with this. All right. The back looks pretty cute too. No, wait, which am I going to roll from the blue to the orange, or from the orange to the blue? Let me thin it out just a bit. Okay. Maybe the orange to the blue. Okay. I want to center it. Well, I'm a little bit short on one side. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I am now going to thin it from this side. I need it to be a little wider. Okay. Orange. Okay, good. Okay. So basically, I just thinned it as much as I felt I had to. And that's why the gold is dense. And the space between is pretty narrow. So I'm going to stop there because you know what happens next. I think you've already seen it. Take this, curve it that way, and roll it up. Or maybe leave it spear-shaped. I don't have any spears like this, I don't think. Do I? well, I have this one, which is rather curvy. Now let's look at this one as opposed to this one. All right, I think you can see the difference. This one, obviously, I had made the cuts closer together, but I also had to stretch it out at the tips, and that's why it got thin. See, it's pretty dense right through here, isn't it? The gold is dense, but as you get to the tips, it starts spreading out and sort of crackling apart. Well, that happened because this sheet was too short. Or I covered, well, I'm not sure how I made this one. This might have been actually wrapping a cylinder and then thinning the ends out. Yeah, I think that's how I did it. I wrapped a cylinder and then I thinned the ends out. This one, I made the form first, covered it completely, and that's why there's no thinning gold at the tips. Okay. Maybe we'll use this one later, but I decided that it would probably be easier for you to see if I did this on black. So what I've got here is a sheet of black clay that I rolled through the thickest setting of the pasta machine, and I put many coats of gold on. Now, these variables, we're gonna cover two variables here. One is, the first variable is just simply the distance between the cuts. All right, so here you see, where are you? Oh, there's one. See how close those cuts are together? You can see that the strips are very small, very narrow and close together. Here is the opposite end of the spectrum. Actually, this is the very opposite, where the gold is quite thick. Yeah, okay. Which indicates that the cuts were wider apart. All right, so I think that that's an easy variable to understand. Now, the next thing I want to cover, though, is how the direction you roll the sheet through affects the angle you cut. Okay, now to simplify, just to simplify, let's say that this is the baseline. Every time I roll through, this edge is going to be on the rollers. Okay, of course you could use this, I mean, there are just too many ways, right? So let's remove that from our little experiment. We're always going to roll here. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is just cut a series of parallel cuts, and they're parallel to where we're going to roll through, to the, let's just call this the base, parallel to the base. I'll make some very close and some very far. Okay, now let's take this and put it on this sheet. Like so. Now, the next one I'm going to cut is angled. And I don't have an ideal angle that I cut at. Let's just make it 45 degrees like so. Okay. Oops. It'd be nice to use the right side of the blade for this. So this is the next. And once again, this is where we're going to place it to roll through. So let's angle it. Like so. Let's put this one right next to the first, like that. Now this third piece, once again, here is the baseline, but this time I'm going to cut perpendicular to the baseline. Like so. like that. Now, let's put this one right here. Now, we're going to roll all of this through the pasta machine at the same time. Okay. Let's start at the thickest setting of the pasta machine, which is 0, this edge on the rollers. Okay, now let's repeat, resetting the machine. Let's go to 3 or 2. Okay, now let's go to 3. All right, so in this demonstration, I think you can see that the closer to parallel to the baseline you are, the wider the space between. At a 45 degree angle, this is what you get. And when you're perpendicular, well, there's no space at all between, is there? No, there's no space in between. So when you make your cut, it has to be angled at, it has to be at some angle to your baseline. Okay, so maybe more ideal, maybe something like this. Like this. Wasn't exactly rolled at a 45, maybe it was rolled at a 30 this way. Okay, now let me roll the other direction. I'm going to place this edge on the rollers. Setting number 4. There we go. All right. Okay, so now I expanded the space between the perpendicular, expanded the space between the angled, and this one stayed pretty much the same. So what does this tell you? That you have a lot of control as to the space in between, starting with the direction that you cut, the angle you cut, paired with where you're rolling from, the direction you're rolling. Okay, so there we go. The more parallel, the wider. The more perpendicular, the narrower the space in between the paint. Okay, so that's variable number 2. Was that number 2 or number 1? I don't know. It's a variable. Let me prepare for the next one. Okay, my peeps, we are at the end of class. Here they are. These guys came out of the oven, and you know what? They look fine. Now, my personal preference is to have more gold and would be to cover more of the background up, more along these lines. And you could do that if you can find the appropriate screen. I don't have the appropriate screen, but this is fine and it works. Okay. Now, we covered the variables. I wanted to cover the variables because, first of all, I had to understand the variables myself, right? I started doing it. I loved what I was doing. Thought immediately, oh yeah, I have to show you guys, so we're going to make earrings. Then I realized that I had to show you how to make matching earrings because I kept making mismatched earrings. So I had to come up with a system that would enable you to make matching earrings. So I did that. And then, must have come to me in a dream, then I realized Silkscreen can do that too. So that had to be included in the class. Then as I looked at my pieces, I realized, this is thinner, this is thick, this gold is dense, this gold is thinner, this gold is really, really thin. I better figure out a way of telling you why they're different. Because if you understand why they're different, you will understand how to make what you want to see. So that's where the variables came in, and I hope I explained them well enough to you so that you can go forth and make what you want. Okay? Yeah, it was important. I felt it was important because it's nothing worse than showing you something and then telling you how to do it and you not being able to do it because I ignored variables like thickness, like the direction you roll through, like how much paint you put on, like the angle that you cut. You get the picture. You get the picture. So now I hope I've equipped you with all the variables and with the basic technique that will enable you to go forth and make what you want. That was my goal anyway. So if you guys have any questions, if you feel I haven't covered anything, you can ask me and I will do my best to rectify the situation. So that's it. Today's Friday, another Friday. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I don't know when you're watching this, but you know, whatever. When Friday comes, I hope you have a great weekend. So, it's time for me to sign off. I'm getting a little slap happy. So without further ado and a few doinks, I am gonna sign off now. Love you guys. Thanks.